And we are live. Thank you for tuning in to Learn and Laugh Out Loud, episode 30. My name is Sumair Abro. I'm a business growth and leadership coach and host of this show. Our topic for today's episode is nurturing self worth and growing in pain. And to discuss this, my guest today is Christine Handy. Now, before I bring her in, just wanted to tell you a little bit about Christine. When she faced the unimaginable, right? She had to put her fabulous modeling career on hold with unexpected medical issues. And through these trying times, she trusted God and came out healed and stronger than ever before. She's a motivational speaker, a best selling author of Walk Beside Me, and serves on the board of two nonprofit organizations. Christine's inspirational journey led her to embracing her self esteem, devotion to God, and value of friendship. She's a mother of two, a breast cancer survivor. So, we will learn with Christine and, of course, share a few laughs as this is Learn and Laugh Out Loud right after this. So, I guess your clubbing days have become more sophisticated now.
But many people would take that as an insult.
I have a headache. What's going to be your laugh?
Oh, I have this great idea, but I don't want to tell you about it.
And we're back with Christine. Hi, Christine.
Hi, happy to be here. Hopefully, we can do some laughing. This is a very serious subject.
See, it's the thought that counts. So, on a serious subject, you started with a laugh. So, hopefully, we will learn and also share a few laughs.
Yes.
But before we get into the meat of the topic, because as you said, it's a heavy, heavy topic. Nurturing self worth, growing in pain. I wanted you to take a couple of minutes and talk about some of the things you are working on right now, because you told me all that cool stuff that you're doing. I wanted the audience to know more about your upcoming fashion shows, speaking engagements, all of that. So go for it.
Okay, great. Yes, so I am going to be walking the runway for New York Fashion Week for the spring. As we talked about, I'm a breast cancer survivor and I have a concave chest. And so through storytelling and a 40-year career as a model, the modeling industry has embraced me and my story and what this looks like, which is my norm now. And so I'm going to be strutting the catwalk, hopefully with something very tight and fitted to show off, the beauty of being flat and concave after surviving breast cancer, so that other women can feel just great and beautiful in their own skin. Because so often, our society just flashes all these, things around us that wants us to look like everybody else and wants us to be just like everybody else. And we're just not, we're all very different. And that can look different in many ways. And for a lot of breast cancer survivors or patients, that means they have a flat chest. So I'm going to continue my modeling journey. I was in New York yesterday for a photo shoot with American Cancer Society. Again, rocking the flat and, showing the world that we all look different and it's okay. And my self-worth is rooted in faith. It's not rooted in, outside accolades or what the world wants me to look like. And so, yeah, the more I continue to go on this modeling journey, the greater that I can have an impact on other women. And that's been a real principle, and it's a real treasure for me. Very lucky.
Absolutely. I love that. I love how you framed everything. And as we were talking earlier, it's all about how you tell a story, how you frame it. So, anyone who has tuned in, if you have any questions for Christine, please shoot them in. We will try to include them in our discussion. And I wanted to now, talk about self worth, right? So, and you have a book. We'll talk more about that also. But I wanted to start off with this. You just so confidently talked about flat and walking the runway flat. Um, Easier said than done. So I wanted to understand from your perspective
Yeah.
that you're a breast cancer survivor, and your body was not like this before.
Right.
That transition, right? It just didn't happen, right? That it happened, and you're like, okay, whatever, I'll just move forward, right?
No, no, it definitely didn't just happen. And for me, I have kind of a unique story. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2012, I had mastectomies in 2013, and I had implants. And so I went from having, 41-year-old breasts to implants, which were kind of better. And, they stayed up high
You were
and
saying that. I don't know if you laugh or not. I'm sorry.
I mean, listen, being diagnosed with breast cancer
Yeah,
is horrendous.
sure.
It's so traumatic.
Yeah.
But, but the implants for me gave it some levity. I was like, okay, well, I've got a lot of scars. It's not my tissue, but these are pretty.
Right.
And so it wasn't until last summer when I got a MRSA infection in the implants that I became concave. So I lived 7 years after breast cancer with implants. So I didn't have a concave chest.
Okay.
In fact, yeah. And so this is a new thing for me. And I've been modeling since I was 11, but now the modeling is changed dramatically, right? Because it went from being kind of looking whole, right? So to speak, if we're going to use a label.
Right.
Right. I mean, I looked like a woman. I looked the same in essence. My hair grew back after chemotherapy and I had these breasts and I looked kind of like me again. And now after last summer, I look different. And so it's a process, right? It's a process to digest that extreme. That was extreme. We're not talking about like getting a tooth pulled. We're talking about removing your breasts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
As a woman, that's an extreme thing that we go through. And it's not that easy to digest, but it is a mindset for one. It's how you digest it. It's how you talk to yourself. It's how other people talk to you. And I'll give you a really short but interesting example. Right when I went concave, again, because of this MRSA infection, I have a big social media presence. And so I posted a picture after it was done and a fitted type of shirt. I can't remember exactly, but somebody commented on that post and said, were you born a man or a woman? And it was a little bit raw for me at that moment because it was raw for me because it just happened. And I was still trying to get used to it. And I looked in the mirror after he said that and I was like, am I lying to myself? Because am I feeling confident about this when I shouldn't? Should I be ashamed of this? It made me question how I was responding to it. And it took me about 3 or 4 days to respond to that man on social media. I didn't want to react. I didn't want to, when people give you negativity or anger, it's super easy for us to fly off the handle and react and be like, how dare you? And whatever. I don't want to put that out into the world. There's enough of that. There's enough people that do that. That's not who I am. And so I wanted to react out of grace and be honest and vulnerable. And so it took me like 3 days and I cried. There were tears because it shook me. And I asked some friends and family and I said, should I be looking at this differently? Do I look like a man? And they were like, it's his problem. And I know that. I knew that.
Right.
But I needed to ask other people because he brought up the question. And so I did respond to him eventually, like 3 days later. And I all I said was, why did you ask me that? And he goes, forget it. I don't, it's no big deal. And I let it go. But how we respond is one part of this. How other people respond is the other part of this. We can't control how other people respond. And if somebody thinks I look like a man, I don't care. But a lot of women don't feel that way. That probably, but I'm so rooted in self-esteem, and it's taken me a long time. I'm so rooted in faith that I'm a little bit unshakable, but most people aren't. And that's why I love to talk about self-esteem, because there was a time in my life at the age of 40, before I was diagnosed with cancer, where my self-esteem was a zero. I was bullied by a doctor. I went through great trauma with my arm, and this doctor he abused me. But I allowed him to abuse me because I had no self-esteem. He told me that the pain and swelling in my arm from an infection was in my head. I believed him. He told me that I was a hysterical housewife, although I'd never shed a tear in his office. I believed him. And so, to go from that kind of self-esteem, which, I felt no self-worth, which, by the way, was interesting because I was almost at, a greater time of my modeling career, but I didn't feel worthy of the career. I didn't feel worthy of the attention because I didn't feel worthy inside myself. Did you go from that to now where I've concave chest and I'm like, I don't care. That's a lot of introspection. That's a lot of time spent rooting myself in faith. What does that mean? Right? Taking the voices out of my head that told me I was unworthy. Those are comments that I used to say to myself, and taking those thoughts captive in my own head and saying, no, I'm not going to live like that anymore. And a lot of that work, it's hard. And a lot of people just say, forget it. I'm not going to do it. But I knew I needed to do that because my faith was so shaky that I was on quicksand. I was dependent on the external. I was dependent on the material world. I was depending on the modeling industry that told me, yes, you're good. No, you're not. That was my stronghold. And we all have idols in our life. And when you are struck with tragedy, your idols are going to come up really quickly, because if your idols are not rooted in something really strong, you're going to sink. It's quicksand. And so I had no choice. I had to shift my perspective. I had to change with voices in my head. And I had to change who I was listening to, like tolerating a bully doctor. That was never going to happen again. But I had to change. I had to do the inner work to not let that happen. And so that guy, he shook me for a couple of days because it was new. And I was in emotional pain, but I was in great physical pain. And when you're in great physical pain, you're very sensitive, and it's hard for you to have a bird's eye perspective. All you can see is what's in front of you. And oftentimes what's in front of you is still a little bit cloudy. And so I didn't have that, 30,000 foot view looking down going, who cares what that guy thinks, right? And so although it shook me for 3 days, after the 3 days, I was like, okay, that comment is out of my life. Any comment, any hater that comes into my life now, I'm good. But a lot of people aren't. And that's why I love to speak. So yes, I don't know.
That's phenomenal. I'm so moved to hear you talk about all that you talked about. Not reacting. And before we move forward, there's someone in the audience who's just commented. It's not really a question, but I just wanted to read this loud.
Yeah.
We have a comment from Bridget Sarika. She writes, where is the kindness? It's so sad, but I honor your grit and grace. Such a healthy perspective and way to honor living. So thank you so much for tuning in, Bridget, and listening in and commenting.
Beautiful.
And Christine, yeah, go ahead.
That's so, okay. Let me talk about her comment.
Sure.
Because if we don't encourage one another, I can sit here and talk to you all day about this. But by her commenting and encouraging me, that gives me more courage. That's a courage net. And so thank you, Bridget. It helps me. And although I'm strong, and although I'm tough, and although I'm rooted in my faith, and I'm pretty unflappable, I do need courage. And I need people to cheer me on. And people do it all the time. And that gives me more courage. So thank you.
Well, that's awesome. The best thing about being tough is that you're tough, right? You can do a lot of things. But I think sometimes the worst thing about being tough is that everybody thinks you're tough. You don't need help. So I think everybody needs help.
That can be pride and ego too. Because when I was diagnosed with cancer, I didn't feel like I was worthy of people's time and attention.
Right.
I didn't feel like people giving up 15 months of their life. Because I've just gone from major arm battle. It was 9 months of my life, and my arm was fused, and I became handicapped in my right arm, and I was just digesting that, and all of a sudden I was diagnosed with cancer, and my friends and family had taken me to doctor's appointments for months with my arm, and then all of a sudden I have cancer, and I'm like, I'm not worthy of their time. And they were giving up their resources, and my kids were young, and I'm thinking to myself, why? I don't want all this attention on me. We need the attention on my kids, and they were suffering, and so my self-esteem was just so low, and I didn't know how to ask for help because I was so insecure, and my pride and my ego was prohibiting me from asking for help. But if I just had said to myself, which is true knowledge, people who help you, people that serve you, they want to, because that's a shared experience with them. And if we just get rid of the pride and the ego and the lack of self-esteem by saying, oh, we're not worthy of this, everybody's worthy of it. Everybody's worthy of time and attention. Everybody's worthy of you listening to your story. And until we all realize that, until we all start listening to each other's stories, nothing's going to change. People can't understand what it feels like to be diagnosed with breast cancer if they haven't been diagnosed with breast cancer. But people can understand and be compassionate if I tell you my story.
Sure.
And everybody has something in their life they need to share. And if we can listen, then that's the grit and grace, right? That's the learning. But so often we're dismissed. Like that doctor dismissed me and told me the pain is in my head. And when you're dismissed, that's bullying. And then there's no compassion, there's no empathy, and then we feel alone. And then our crisis gets more critical. Because when you walk through trauma alone, the crisis is more critical. You got to have people around you.
That's beautiful. I actually wanted to ask you a follow-up question on all of that you talked about. But before that, I wanted you to mention the book that you have, Walk Beside Me, and tell everyone how they can get a hold of this book, what this book is about.
So Walk Beside Me is a fictional depiction of my life, and it was published 5 years ago. It's my journey through modeling and breast cancer and my arm. It's actually being made into a film called Willow, the feature film. An amazing human being, Ziad Hamza, who is an Oscar award-winning screenplay writer and director, wrote the script for my book. It's going to be a great film. It's been put on hold because of COVID, but it's getting back on track, and I'm excited about it. But my book is just it's a real story about breast cancer, trauma and walking through that. And it's a fictional novel. It's not a self-help book. It's just the story. And it's very vulnerable, and people like it because I share the good, the bad, and the ugly, which a lot of people don't want to share. I share really dark stuff in there, but it's a hopeful message, and I think it's a great book. I read it again a lot when I feel like I have less courage. I read my book and I go, okay, no, you're a badass, and I just need a little reminder, and then I'm all good.
And speaking of badass, this whole attitude and what you talked about earlier, and anyone tuning in and listening to Christine, go check out her book, Walk Beside Me. I'm so inspired, and hey, I almost forgot, it's going to be turned into a movie, so I cannot wait to watch that movie.
Yeah, it's
now
called Willow.
I have a personal connection with the movie because it's about you.
It's called Willow, the feature film, or it will be called. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So Christine, I wanted to understand this, and we talked about it offline also. You talked about going through breast cancer, living with implants for 7 years, and then they had to be taken off. And so, I think I mentioned earlier, for guys, I can talk about myself. A long time ago, I was running this workshop, and during a break, this guy walks up to me, and he asked me this question. He says, "So what are you doing about our mutual problem?" And I was like, you know, I had no idea what he was talking about. I was like,
I
and
love
then I
that.
looked at him, and he had a bald head like me,
Yeah.
right? So I was like, "Are you talking about this?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh," I said, I have never really looked at it as a problem. Maybe that's why it has not affected me, right? So I
Good
think,
for you.
yeah. So being a guy, I think the way the society is, you sort of have to brush it off and move forward. Although, when I was younger, hair used to be a big part of my personality.
Yeah.
But why I'm telling you this, because I wanted to ask you this. For women, the body type and all which comes along, it's such an important part of being who you are, and especially in the profession that you are in, a
Right.
model.
Right.
So this badass attitude, was there like a tipping point that you said, fuck it, I don't care, I love the way I am, I'm just going to move forward?
Like, I mean, I got there, right? But when I was diagnosed with cancer, I was not there yet.
Okay.
I was very, very, very much dependent on what I look like. I was very much dependent on the material world. I was very much dependent on external accolades. And that place was very fleeting, very lonely, and very temporal. And so I had to get to know myself pretty quickly. When my hair was taken away, I felt like I was worthless. I mean, I was 90 pounds wet. I had just had a mastectomy. I was going through chemotherapy for months. I mean, just those drugs alone make you an emotional wreck. And then to, be forced to lose your hair and have mastectomy surgeries and all this going on when you're trying to be a mother and you're trying to be a friend and you're trying to be a wife and all these other things and just trying to live in this life. It's shocking, the disparity between what I looked like in the mirror and what society wanted me to look like. The disparity was so great that I couldn't figure it out. And so what eventually happened was that I let go of what society thought of me. And I let go of trying to keep up. I let go of trying to, go to the mall to buy something to make myself feel better because I felt bad. I felt, I felt so bad that I felt like I needed like temporary things. Well, those didn't work, and my hair, losing my hair, it was horrible. I hated it. But I was okay because my soul and my friends and my family, they still showed up for me. So they didn't show up for me because of what I looked like. They showed up for me because of who I was. And all of those lessons that I was learning, gave me this kind of inner strength to say, okay, well, the outcome we don't know, right? I didn't know if I was going to get over, I didn't know if I was going to live through cancer. I didn't know if it was going to take my life. I didn't know if chemo was going to kill me because sometimes it does.
Yes.
So when I stopped focusing on the outcome, like the loss of hair, and I just focused on every single day waking up and being an inspiration, and how I walked through those terrible tragedies, people were watching. And so I could have been in a victim mode, which I started off as, or I could have shown people what it looks like to have grit and grace and to be a leader in a very tragic moment. And when I transitioned from being a victim to that leader, I got more confident. And I started to build my faith and I started to build who I was inside because that's what mattered. And then you have these waves of like confidence that come. Like you've got this kind of like tornado from behind that's pushing you forward versus a tornado coming at you. And it's perspective, it's mindset, it's how you talk to yourself, and it's how you decide, these are choices, to handle the trauma. And man, I was in so much physical pain and so much emotional pain. I'm not dismissing what you go through. I was at the brink of death. But even at the brink of death was a choice to show my children either courage or a victim mentality. And I had to decide what was I going to show them.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And on that note, in nurturing self-worth, and just being comfortable in your own skin, and you talked about accepting who you are, the way you look, and moving forward, and you talked about being a leader. And there's so many people that you come across
Mhm.
who cannot do what you have done, right?
Yeah.
They cannot. So yes, it is a choice. Yes, it can be done. You have done it, and there's so many other people. But again and again, I see people who just cannot do it, right? I mean, do you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah.
So what?
I think that by my storytelling and by me being able to share the vulnerability in the pain, it gives people courage in their own life.
Yes.
And then maybe they are not looking for the stories. Maybe they're not looking to be encouraged. You know, a lot of people get stuck, right? And I did too. I got paralyzed in the pain. But if you stay in that, you're never going to get out. And so for me, I had a new vision. I made I made my own quote. I said, okay, no, there's going to be purpose in my pain. I should trademark that. And I lived it.
You should.
But I lived it. And every single day that I woke up, even though I knew I was going to chemotherapy, I'd walk around the chemo room to the other patients and I'd sit with them. I'd be hooked up with my port and I'd walk around with the port, you know, rolling the port with me. And I'd talk to the other patients and I'd try to encourage them. I was in the hospital last year for this MRSA infection when my chest cavity was excavated. And it was the middle of COVID. There was nobody in the hospital. There were 7 people on the floor. And I would go each day, knock on their door, and I'd say, how can I help you? What can I pray with you for? Whatever. That wasn't about me. It had nothing to do with me. I knew what it felt like to be in so much pain that I was afraid to live another day. And when people showed up for me, they showed me what that real, you know, cheering on looked like. And so if I could lighten somebody's load in the hospital last summer, or I could lighten somebody's load at chemo, wasn't about Christine Handy. It was about serving. And, you know, I went from being so self-indulgent when I was a model, right? To being so serving and not caring so much about the promotion and the PR and you know, that was my life. It was very transactional when I was a model. It was, you know, how can I get to bigger clients? And, you know, I was stuck in that for so long. But when I was faced with the trauma, I could have stayed in that, right?
Right.
But I wanted to get out of it because I knew happiness. There are a lot of happy moments I had, but I hadn't felt joy. And when I started to serve and when I started to show up for people and when people started to show up for me, I started to feel joy, even in pain. I started to feel a different type of joy. And I was like, I want more of that. I'm going to keep going towards that. That light I want to go towards. And that was faith. That was friendship, and that was joy. And so I got a taste of it, right? I got a taste of what it looked like to serve. I mean, look at this sweet girl who's messaging me. She didn't have to write that. You know, she didn't have to take the time to listen to this, but she is, and she's encouraging me. If we encourage other people, it's like a tidal wave. It changes, it can stop somebody from committing suicide. It's really that important.
Yes, and it is so important and to hear you. And for anyone who is tuned in, I can certainly not get enough of Christine. So, Christine, I want you to show your book again. If you want to learn more about her work, her story, uh, get a hold of this. And a movie will also come out eventually. But hey, a book is a book. You cannot, you know, I'm not downplaying your movie, but you know, hey, a book
No,
is a
no, no,
book.
I know. Yeah. No, we have to focus on what's now. We can't focus on the future.
Okay, so Christine, listen, I want with so many young people out there now, and this whole age of social media and Instagram. You know, you talked about, so when you are a model, being self-indulgent, right? So the way we look, our appearance and all of that, it does play a role in building up your confidence, right? It does. Feeling good about yourself. What would you say to, I mean,
I think it's an inside
it's funny,
job.
you're not even letting me
I
complete
think
the
it's an
question.
inside job.
Sorry.
I think it's an inside job. At the
Okay.
height of my modeling career, when I was the most beautiful I've ever been in my life, I was 23 years old. I was modeling I was a guest model, right? I was modeling in Barcelona. I was living in the elite modeling agency. I had zero self-worth. I thought I was ugly. I thought I was fat. It's an inside job. I am so scarred. I have scars all over my arm. I have a fused arm. I'm handicapped. I have scars all over my chest. I've never felt more beautiful.
Oh, wow.
It's an inside job.
I have never spoken to someone who has given the inside job a new meaning, you know, a good meaning.
It's true though. I mean, how many times have you gone out and bought something and you're like, oh, this is going to make me feel better? Or gone out to go get a drink or gone out to a social event and talked, and had a lot of fluff and not real conversations, but small talk. Did that ever
Right.
make you feel better?
No,
Did that ever fill you up?
no.
It's depleting. And I'm not saying don't go to social events. I love a good social event. But unless I'm having a meaningful conversation, it's not going to fill me up. I don't have time for that. I'm focused, right? So I don't do fluff conversations. I don't do small talk. And I don't have much of a social life because I'm on a mission to help more and more people. But I think it's so true of when you ask yourself, did this fill me up? Does this relationship fill me up? Does this platform, does this social media, does this Instagram fill me up? Do I get enough likes? Do I get enough comments? Man, that's quicksand. That's quicksand.
It's quicksand. So what would you tell? I mean, if you had to tell people three things, and I think with a lot of younger people, this is a big issue. And obviously, when I was younger, I feel more confident now than I did 20 years ago. And of course, with
Sure.
experience and age, you learn quite a few things.
Wisdom, of course. Mhm.
With some of the younger people who get sucked into this world of all of that, what are the three things you would like to say to them so they can also start working on that inside job early on, not wait for something bad to happen? What would you say?
Well, this is a little bit of a cliche, but whoever you surround yourself with, you become.
Sure.
Whatever you meditate on, you become. Whatever voices you hear in your head, like I am worthy or I'm pathetic, I am strong or I am weak, whatever voice that you hear, that's what you become. And so for me, I had those voices of you're pathetic, you're worthless, you have no value, you lost your hair, you lost your external beauty, you lost your arm, you lost your wrist, you allowed that doctor to bully you. Those voices, they consumed me. But once I realized that those voices weren't serving me, and God was bigger than that, and my faith was stronger than that, and I needed to have a different idol, then my whole world changed. I started to talk kindly to myself. And so self-talk is critical. How you talk to yourself and take those thoughts captive. Like if you say to yourself you're not worthy, meditate on that. Where does that come from?
Right.
Why do you feel that way? But spend time in that and ask yourself questions. The second thing is self-esteem. Self-esteem is a muscle. So like you go to the gym to work out your muscles. I go to Harvard right now. I'm getting my master's degree in creative writing. I'm getting my master's degree because I had horrible chemo brain and I could hardly put two sentences together after I was done with chemo. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to fix this, or at least try to. So I'm going to go back to school. And that has really helped me. So, you go to the gym to work out, you go to school to work on your brain or do puzzles or crossword puzzles or read. All those things help. I work on my self-esteem every day. I have positive self-affirmations. I have positive self-talk. I pour into Oprah's Super Soul conversations because what you hear, you become as well, right?
Sure.
If I put on any news platform in the country right now, by the end of the day, I would be so depressed. It's fear-based. It's depleting. It's not encouraging you. It's basically saying you're worthless and your choices are wrong. And we know better what you should do with your body, with your life, your choices we should do. And so I'm not turning that on. I'm going to listen to podcasts from preachers that I honor and respect. And I'm going to listen to my own voice. So I think those three things, I think who you surround yourself with, who you're listening to,
Right.
the voices in your own head, what you're saying to yourself, and work on your self-esteem. It's a practice. It didn't take me a year to go from being dependent on my external to being dependent on my internal. It didn't take a year. It took several years. But it was also a choice for me to do that introspection. It's important to do that so then you can help other people with it. But most importantly, you have to help yourself first.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. All 3 points. And there's a famous saying, you show me your friends and I'll show you where you will be in 10 years.
Exactly.
I totally agree with all the 3 points you mentioned. But I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Okay. Uh,
I'm always up for a good challenge.
there are people out there who will say, "Hey, you know what? What Christine just talked about is a lot of woo-woo talk." Um, I've heard that, because I'm a big supporter of all you talked about. Um, any suggestions on people who think that all this mumbo jumbo is just for books and it doesn't work? And anything you want to add or say?
I think judgment is one of the worst things we can do. I think that our world is being swallowed by people judging other people. If people watch this and they don't agree with me, I respect them. And I'm not going to disagree with them because we all have to find what it is that we're rooted in. We all have to find what it is we idolize. And for me to say you should idolize this and not that is not serving other people. I can only tell you how I got through it. And I mean, I'm going to keep telling my story. And if that feeds you, great. If it doesn't, turn it off. But judging other people for how they get through it, it's not what I do.
Awesome. Hey, you passed the challenge. I agree with that. And, you know, I think when we set out ourselves to change the world, I think the first step is to change how we look at the world. And with our stories, if we can trigger a thought process somewhere, like people who are listening into you, that's really it. And just to follow up on this, we have another person in the audience, uh, Janet. She wants to ask you a question,
Okay.
and and she has written that that the ticker says growing in pain. So she wants to ask you, what does that mean, growing in pain? Can you talk a little bit about this?
Right. Well, I think that a lot of our culture thinks that people grow in success, right? And there's also people that say, "Oh no, you only grow through trauma." I think it's a combination, but I think it's how we react to the pain. I think it's how we react to the trauma. And it can be a measure when you go through pain and trauma to lead, right? Like I said, by example, and to show up for yourself and to show up for other people in that pain. And that's part of growth. Now, if I had stayed in that victim mode where I can't believe this is happening to me, I just got through this with my arm, and God, why? And why did that doctor bully me? And why did I let him? And all these other questions that are valid, then I would have stayed paralyzed and I wouldn't have grown through my pain. But I didn't want to be stuck. I knew what stuck looked like. I was stuck for 40 years and it was lonely. And I wanted to grow through the process. And so by growing through my process and growing through my pain, I came out a different side. And I came out very dependent on my faith. I came out very dependent on self-esteem. And I became very dependent on serving others. But that's a type of growth. And now through the accomplishments that I've I've written a book and I'm going to Harvard, and these things to the world look like, great accolades. Although I'm learning and although I'm studying and although, these things are helping other people, I'm growing through that as well. Because all of it is growth. And so I just choose in everything that I go through, whether it's positive, negative, trauma, pain, emotional pain, physical pain, I want to grow through that. And so that's what I call growing in pain.
Awesome, awesome. We have a few more minutes left, and I want to wrap all this up with all these things that you've talked about. You're going back to school, right? You're studying, what is it again? Creative writing, is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm getting my master's degree in creative writing and literature. A lot of
Okay.
reading, a lot of writing, and I'm in chronic pain. My arm is fused and I have chronic pain. And so typing hurts. And I'm a writer. So it's a choice. But
So,
my faith is bigger. I know that the grace is sufficient and I'll get through it.
right. I mean, so you already have a real powerful story. You have a book, and a movie will be coming out. So why now get into this formal process of getting a master's degree? I mean, is this something that you have been craving for, or
I never really craved higher education. I did get a degree at SMU, but after I graduated from SMU, I went back to modeling. And so I didn't really crave it until after I went through chemotherapy when my brain was just fried. And, having chemo brain is a real thing, and it's really frustrating because you have a loss of, like certain memories and things like that. And so I wanted to correct it as much as I could. And so that's why that was the goal to going back to school. But I wanted to pick something that I loved, which is writing. And I also had the confidence at that point to shoot for the stars. Well, I wanted to go to Harvard, and you know what? They accepted me. So,
well, good for you, good for Howard. I think this has been really. I've gotten quite a few inputs from you. I'm always looking for inspiration. Your story, what has happened, what is happening with you right now, and what you're planning to do, because I think those are really important, right? So I wanted to now just switch gears a little bit and maybe ask you a few fun, silly questions if you're up to it. What do you think?
I'm up for it.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, and this is something I've asked other people, and I've always gotten different responses. So let me throw this one at you, and let's see what you have to say.
Okay.
So when someone orders a pizza with double cheese and pepperoni with a diet drink, what's going on in their mind?
Well, I'm personally allergic to sugar. And so I have a diet drink in front of me
Okay.
because I can't drink the real thing. And I do eat pizza because I'm allergic to sugar. And so cheese is a big staple of my diet. And so is bread because I can't eat so many other things. Now I don't eat meat, so the pepperoni I'd have to change. But it's funny. We're all a little bit
Weird.
we're a little bit fiscally crazy, right? Like we'll pay $10 for, a slice of pizza, but you know what I mean? Like it doesn't make sense all the time. And so that
There's an expression for it. It's called penny wise, pound foolish. Have you heard of that?
yeah. And we all have little idiosyncrasies like that.
Right.
Me included, but I do like my diet soda because I can't drink the real stuff now. And I'm a cancer survivor. So for me to drink a Diet Coke, I don't know. I'm not promoting it, but I do drink it. And I'll tell you another fun tip.
Yeah.
One of the only things that I could eat when I was going through chemotherapy because I was so sick were Cheetos. And I'll never forget my oncologist said to me, he goes, I don't care what you eat because they almost put a feeding tube in me. I was so thin. And he said, just eat something. And so Cheetos, the taste and the crunch, and Cheetos have a strong taste, that cheese. So my friends would just leave bags of Cheetos at my front door, literally. And I would just eat Cheetos.
All right. Two more questions. And then the last one is something which I ask everyone. So this next one, let's see how you answer it. What is your favorite angry word?
I can't say it live.
Would you say it if you were recording it?
I'm not going to say it. But it begins with an F. And when I say that word, it feels good sometimes, because life is hard. Pain sucks. And I'm in chronic pain. And sometimes I'm just like, ah!
Yeah, fudge it.
That doesn't even help. Fudge it does not help.
That does not help, right?
I'm not using that one.
It's like the diet drink, not the real thing, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So last question, and after that, I want you to just also say some parting words. But my last question is something which I ask every person who comes on this show. Okay, here it goes. If heaven exists, and when you arrive at the pearly gates, what would you want God to say to you?
I'm proud of you.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Short, simple, and
I'm looking forward to that day.
Well, I hope it's far, far away because there are a lot of things that you need to do, right?
Right. Well, yeah. Definitely. A lot of people to inspire, I hope.
Absolutely. And I think it's been such a treat Christine, having you on this show. And I'm looking forward to our live networking event next month where we'll get people in there to ask you
Yeah.
questions. So that should be fun also. And any last words for this show or anything that you want to share before we tune off?
I think you heard me on Clubhouse, and I will just say that you never know who needs to hear it. And so by being involved in, multi platforms, it's important because there's so many people that do need to hear it.
Beautiful, beautiful, awesome. Lastly, I want you to show that book again because that I'm so inspired. That the
Thank you.
walk beside me. The title is so powerful, right? Because a lot of times we are talking to people face to face or Q&A, but when you walk beside someone, entire everything changes. So very powerful title, and I
Thank
look forward to the movie also. So thank you for joining us, Christine,
thank
and
you.
thank you, and we are off. Bye bye.